you were present for Francisco Galicia when the 18-year-old American citizen born in Dallas, who ICE detained for over 3 weeks. You were there when he got out of his detention camp. Explain that situation.
Well, he had been in a detention center for 3 weeks. He had his mother and his attorney present the documents to the detention center, and they wouldn't release him. And when we got wind of that story, we organized. So people from One Michigan Immigrant Rights Center contacted us so that we can start spreading the message all over social media. And that pressured the media to show up at the detention center on, I think it was a Monday or a Tuesday of last week. And that's when we arrived with the attorney. And we did a mini press conference. And as the press conference was happening, they released him. They released him. They didn't want us going in because the initial process and for releasing him was for us to go in. It would take a total of 40 minutes after we submitted the documents, which had been submitted more than 3 times, and then they would release him. Once they released him, it was strange because we saw this 19-year-old kid or 18-year-old kid walking in the parking lot, walking towards us, and we looked at him and I said, "Francisco." They said yes, and it was so heart-wrenching to see that they released him and he seemed okay. But to me, I looked at him and I saw a reflection of my own child, of my own son. And it struck me so hard because he said, there's a lot of things that happen behind those doors. I don't want to talk about it right now, but I'm so glad that I'm out. I finally get to see my mom. And right away, he got a phone call and he talked to his mom. Afterwards, we went to a restaurant nearby and we ate lunch. And that's when he, his lawyer, and I were discussing the things that happened to him behind those doors, behind those walls. And it was from the beginning to end at the Falfurrias, Texas checkpoint, where they questioned him. He presented his documentation. They took it away. They wrote on his social security card that they needed to research to see if he was a real U.S. citizen. So to this day, those documents are still being held at that checkpoint center. And he was still put in a detention center for 3 weeks, no water for him to shower with, food that was not really food, but still in better conditions than the checkpoint where he was at. And for him to say they put me in a room and they tried to tell me to give up my U.S. citizenship and deport me. That's the definition of torture, coercion to a United States citizen who was born in the United States, for him to leave because they were racially profiling him from the beginning at that checkpoint.
Did you all at lunch or sometime that day or the next day discuss legal action?
Yes, I told him and his attorney that it would be great if they contacted the ACLU and Southern Poverty Law Center to file a lawsuit against the federal government, including the person who continuously denied that he was a United States citizen despite having his documentation. And I believe her name is Maria Garcia. She is the Border Patrol Assistant Counsel in that particular region. And she knew that this was happening. In the process, we also found out that his congressional representative, Vicente Gonzalez, when one of our organizers called him, he said that it wasn't unusual for South Texas to experience these types of actions when it comes to United States citizens. So anyone that lives below that border checkpoint is at risk every single time they cross it to come to this side of Texas.
Well, were you surprised that, actually I shouldn't say were you surprised, what was your reaction to both U.S. senators, both Republicans, Ted Cruz and John Cornyn, who stayed totally silent and said nothing when this American citizen, one of their constituents by the way, was being detained?
Well, I'm not surprised that they stay silent at all, because they keep pushing this rhetoric, this narrative that people are coming here illegally. Not anyone that is detained is probably because they're illegal, and that's not the case. That is not the case, and I think that a lot of it has to do with their own racism, their own bias, that they just do not want to address this because it destroys their entire narrative.